We talk a lot about loneliness these days, but we don't talk enough about why being alone triggers such deep fear for so many of us. Is it just about relationships, or is there something deeper hardwired into our biology and our psychology? Spoiler alert, it's both. And understanding the roots of this fear is the first step to changing it. If you've ever felt that pit in your stomach at the thought of an empty weekend, or stayed in a relationship far too long just to avoid being alone, you know exactly what I mean. The fear of being alone is deeply human. So while part of it is hardwired for survival, much of it is learned and reinforced by the world around us. So the good news, once we understand the roots of this fear, we can start to unlearn it and even come to appreciate alone time as a source of strength, not weakness. Today, I'll discuss the biology, the psychology, and my top 5 research-backed action steps to reduce your fear of being alone. So definitely stay tuned. Welcome back to the podcast. You know who I am, your host, Dr. Abby Medcalf. And once again, lots of people wrote in asking about loneliness or talking about loneliness in different ways. And I thought, I got to talk about this in a bigger way and give you some action steps to move forward. So that's what we're going to do today. I do have a great free download that goes along with today to help you deal with your loneliness. So I'll tell you about that when we get to the action steps. So hang on. So let's first talk about the biological origins of loneliness. And then I'll talk about kind of the psychology, right? We'll get to all the things, the signs of it, the myths about it, and then my 5 steps. So we are hardwired to connect. We humans, we're social animals, and not just in theory, but in literal brain wiring and the little makeup, your biological makeup. So from an evolutionary standpoint, our ancestors' survival, of course, depended on being part of a group. Isolation of any kind dramatically increased the risk of death. From predators, from starvation, from dehydration, hostile environments, you name it, right? So those who stayed close to the tribe, of course, survived. And those instincts are still really baked into our brains today. So research shows that there's a neuroscience of social pain, okay? Is that how I want to say that? Yes, there's like a neuroscience of social pain. And research shows that social rejection or exclusion of any kind, whatever we perceive as exclusion, really activates the same brain regions as physical pain. That is how much it's wired to avoid. So when we feel left out, when we feel excluded, our anterior cingulate cortex lights up. And that's the same region of the brain involved when we experience physical injury of any kind. Is that crazy? I love when I do research for these episodes because I always come away going, oh my gosh, like I knew this, quote unquote, but now it's like, wow. This is why you think of phrases like heartache or you hurt my feelings. Those aren't metaphors. It's like a real thing. Oxytocin, which I've talked about a lot, it's often called kind of the love hormone. And it plays a central role in bonding and attachment. We often think of it when we think of new moms and their babies, or dads too and their babies. When you're tickling your kids, if you ever tickle your kids, by the way, oxytocin both ways. Higher levels of oxytocin are associated with trust and emotional closeness, basically. So conversely, when oxytocin levels drop, we can feel lonely and anxious. It's like almost like a withdrawal effect. Think of it like that. So think about that pang you feel when you see friends hanging out, without you. Even if you weren't sure you wanted to go, you might have even been invited and said no, but now you're like, oh, that FOMO kind of stuff. That tiny sting isn't just trivial or petty. It's your ancient survival brain kind of sounding an alarm, danger, Will Robinson, I'm dating myself there. If you know what danger Will Robinson is from, you can comment below the video, or if you're watching on YouTube, or anywhere else, but I hope you know. Yeah, Lost in Space. Okay. If you don't know Lost in Space, I don't want to know you. It's like danger, disconnection, right? We can't have it. So this isn't, I guess what I really want to say, this isn't a character flaw. Oh, my New York came out. It's not a character flaw. This isn't a character flaw. It's biology doing what it's supposed to do. But, this wiring served our ancestors. It generally works against us in modern life, especially when our worth becomes entangled with constant social validation. Okay, that probably makes sense. So there's more biology, but I don't want to spend the whole podcast on that, the whole episode on that. And excuse me, I have allergies, so I'll be coughing a little. I know. Taking a sip of water, just bear with me, okay? So let's talk about the psychological origins. So early attachment and cultural conditioning are really at the core of the psychological origins. So if biology lays the groundwork, psychology builds the house. Oh, that was cute. Can someone write that down? Because I'll forget it. If biology lays the groundwork, psychology builds the house. That was pretty good. And this is where, of course, I need to talk about, those attachment styles again. I have entire episodes dedicated to attachment styles. I'll link to those in the show notes. As everybody knows, you can go to my website, abbymedcalf.com. There's a relationship tips and tools page where I write out a whole blog where all the research is, all the, all the links to all the other episodes. And also you could go to the podcast page of this episode and you won't get the whole blog, but you'll get like where all the resources are and stuff like that. So I would really listen to that episode I did on attachment. I think I did a very good job on it. But I'll say this here, our earliest relationships teach us what to expect from others. That's where attachment theory comes from. So if your caregivers were inconsistent, if they were unavailable, if they were overly anxious themselves, you probably developed an insecure attachment style. It might have been avoidant, or you might have developed an anxious attachment style. And as adults, an anxious attachment style often looks like a constant fear of abandonment, a need for excessive reassurance, feeling not good enough without someone else's validation, all those kinds of things. Now, on the flip side, people with secure attachments, they tend to view alone time as, restful rather than threatening. And I will just say for myself, and I will say this for some other clients I have, because it's really interesting, my view of alone time has changed dramatically with how much healthier I've gotten over the years. So shifting my avoidant attachment style into a more secure attachment style, I am amazed at how restorative alone time feels. There were very few people more uncomfortable with alone time than me previously. I got to tell you, even though I was avoidant, not anxious, I was always with people, planning things, doing things. I'm not saying I was making great attachments when I was there, with people, but I wanted to be a part of, in the know, in the thing, doing the thing, planning the thing for years and years and years. And had a really hard time spending time just with myself. I was not, hence being a drug addict for many years in my early time, So when I was, even with drugs, I always liked to shoot up with other people. Isn't that funny? I didn't like to share, but I like to shoot up with other people. So just saying. Right? So it's really interesting. I can say it for myself, but definitely for so many of my clients, we'll be talking and they'll say something about how, I just need some time alone, or they'll be talking about it. And I'll say to them, listen to yourself. This is someone who used to hate time alone, who would always want to be included in every party invitation, or always be the house where everything happened. And then they would be saying to me, you know what? I think I can let my sister host this year, or someone else do it. Or I actually think we're going to cancel having Christmas at my house every year. This year we're going to go away instead as a family. I start to hear this stuff and I'm like, wow, this is someone who's getting much more securely attached and able to not, be in that kind of codependent state of needing to be there for everything. I will say that cultural narratives also play a big role, and we can't have this discussion without saying this. Society is obsessed with the idea of coupling, not hooking, well, hooking up too, but coupling up, right? Movies, books, advertisements, everything is pushing the message that happiness equals togetherness. Happy with a romantic person, like that you're with someone. Being single is, when you look at it, it's often portrayed as this like temporary state you're trying to get out of. It's an undesirable layover before reaching the final destination of partnership, which is the only goal. And even then, think about it, it's supposed to be marriage, or it somehow doesn't really count. I'm always interested when I'll talk to people, like I always say things like, we've been together 12 years or 16 years or 20 years. I like saying that I've been together with this person this long. But I hear people say, oh, we've been married for this many years. And I often ask them, well, how long have you been together though? And there's usually another 2 to 5 years tacked onto that. And it's like, why doesn't that count? Why doesn't that count? You know why? Because the only goal is being married. And there's a subtle message in there, not so subtle to me, but there's that message in there all the time that being married is the only thing that counts, and that's the goal, and anything else is wrong or not near that. And think about romantic comedies, right? The story usually ends with the couple getting together as if that's the only happy ending worth showing. So, we rarely see narratives celebrating solo adventures or self-discovery without some kind of romantic payoff. Like there might be self-discovery, but at the end, there's a romantic payoff, right? Think about, oh my gosh, I like to go out to eat alone. I'm down. I'll sit there like some gangster just staring at the tables. Okay. I don't have my phone out. I occasionally brought a book, I guess, because I like to just, if I'm really hanging out a long time, but if I'm just having a meal, checking in, sometimes I'll read a little before the meal comes. Sometimes, depends. But then when I'm eating, I'm just looking around. I'm eating, I'm taking my time, I'm enjoying my food, I'm looking around. And even when I go into a restaurant, right, only one, I've had that, it's a just you. That's what people say. And, yeah, just me, only me, it's only you. And then a lot of times they try to make you sit at the bar. And I don't want to sit at the bar alone. I want to have a table. I want to sit and enjoy my food. I don't want to sit in an uncomfortable seat. There's this idea that, again, like I can't even get a table. Like I'm not even worthy of that. It's really interesting how people react. So to me, right, it's like culture is doubling down on our biological instincts, right? It making like solitude, being alone seem like it's not just uncomfortable, it's unacceptable. It's no wonder to me that we internalize the fear of being alone so deeply, that we get so much anxiety from it. Hello. So, okay, so let's talk. I want to do a little myth busting, okay, about alone time. And I want to say that, as everybody knows, since I started my Patreon, my online One Love Collective in January of 2025, I offer now bundles with every episode. Of all the extras that the people in my Patreon get. There's different levels in my Patreon, so not every tier gets everything, but I do take everything that like through tier 3 gets, the quote unquote top tier, my VIP Love Lab, everything that they get is put in a bundle. And I offer that separately for $8 in case you don't want to, pay a monthly thing and be in an online community. I don't know why not. They're really fun. You have live Q&As with me. I don't know. We're having a great time in there. It's an amazing supportive community. But if you don't want to make that kind of commitment and you just want to go deep, if being alone is a huge issue for you, you can just buy the bundle. I'll talk about it at the end. But one of the things I have in the bundle is more of the myths about alone time. I think there's like 15 I identified. I'm just going to go through a few right now, like 4 of them or 5 of them. So, because there's a lot of the fear of being alone really comes from these I think, deeply embedded myths, things you've heard it so many times, you just assume it's true, right? Um, so I'm going to talk about a few right now. Again, a longer list is coming. And if you want to know everything in the bundle, you have to just wait to the end. I'll talk about everything that's in the bundle at the very end. So myth number one is that being alone means you're lonely. This is probably the thing I hear the most. Like, well, you have to be lonely. Aren't you lonely? People will say that. Oh, you're alone. Even now, if Gary's away for the weekend or goes somewhere, people say, oh, are you lonely? What are you doing? What are you doing while he's gone? I'm like, what am I doing while he's gone? I hope nothing. Like, I hope I could just enjoy the house on my own. I don't know. But there's this idea. Mother's Day was recently, was just this past weekend by the time when I'm recording this. And my kids are away, and people were just like, oh, you're not seeing your kids, or you're not being, and I'm like, people like to project their own feelings onto you. So our job is not to take it on, right? And loneliness is very much a subjective experience. It's not a circumstance. And I want to say that again. Loneliness is a subjective experience, not a circumstance, meaning that it's the meaning you put on it. Because you can be surrounded by people and feel profoundly lonely, okay? Or be alone and feel deeply content. So it's subjective. It depends on the person. It depends on what you think about it. Research consistently shows that the quality of your connections matters far more than the quantity. And I always think of someone at a crowded party scrolling through their phone, feeling disconnected. Compare that to someone solo hiking, just hiking, feeling at peace in nature, right? One's in a crowd, but lonely, and the other's alone, but connected, to themselves, to their environment, to whatever, to God, to whatever. So that is, it is totally about what's in your head, about what it's supposed to be. And when people give you, come at you with like, oh, you're alone. Yeah. Oh, you're alone. I forgot. Or you're lonely. I forgot, or something, when they're again, projecting their anxiety onto you, it's very easy to take it on as a fact. And it's not. Myth number two, if you're alone, something must be wrong with you. Solitude is not a sign of failure. It's, in fact, and here's what's crazy. In the research, again, I linked to all the research. You can go look it up yourself. It's associated with higher levels of self-awareness, higher levels of creativity, and emotional balance. How do you like that? Great thinkers throughout history. Virginia Woolf, Albert Einstein, very famously Maya Angelou, have actively sought solitude for reflection and innovation. It is very common. Alone time can be a power source, definitely not a deficiency. And I will tell you what's interesting is that, so I didn't get married the first time until I was 35. Was I 35 when I got? Yeah, I was. And so here I am dating in my 30s, right? In my early 30s. And I can't tell you how many men and women, I was dating both, would meet me and go, there's something, some of them even said it to me. Other people, you could tell from how they were asking questions, something was clearly wrong with me that I was single at that age. It is very, very interesting. There is something wrong with you, especially as women. I think men get away with it longer. Men, you can chime in, maybe you don't, but I think you do. I think you can be a little older and kind of get away with it. And even get pats on the back, like, oh, you skipped the old, ball and chain for longer. But it was like suspicious that I was still on the market, and what's interesting? If I had been divorced with like a kid, people would have been less suspicious. It was so funny. But the fact that I hadn't been married or even engaged, nothing. And I had been in relationships. I'd been in longer term relationships, that kind of thing. But people were very like, something was wrong with me. So that comes up too if you're alone past a certain age, I guess. Myth number 3 is that you'll get used to being alone and then you'll push people away. I have not found this to be true because I've only found it, and let me just be really clear, I've only found it to be true when people don't want to be alone but are and hate it. And so they then start to push other people away and get too afraid to be in relationships. But comfort, if you have comfort with solitude, it actually improves your relationships. And studies show this. They show that people who enjoy healthy alone time tend to have stronger, more secure social bonds. When you're not desperate for connection, you enter relationships from a place of fullness, not neediness. And that this attracts healthier dynamics. You know, I talk a lot about the 40 versus 11 million bits, right? That our brain processes information, our conscious brain at a rate of 40 bits per second, and our subconscious brain processes information at a rate of 11 million bits per second. So when you're uncomfortable, I call that the wobble, when you're going on first dates and things and you're desperate or needy or like, oh, it's gotta be, people pick up on that and they don't always know what it is, but they're getting that 11 million bits. Even if you think you're cool as a cucumber, even if you think you're coming across as like, I'm the best, I'm cool, I love being alone, even if your words are different, if your energy is needy, clingy, desperate, grasping, people pick up on that and they pull away. They feel the wobble. They know that your words aren't matching your energy and it's like, and they know you're lying, they just don't know about what. So that happens a lot. So you got to get comfortable with who you are and being alone. You need a full life. That feels great. Like, yes, it'd be wonderful to have a relationship here. It'd be wonderful to have different friendships, but I am also comfortable. I'm my own great company, so yes. And I'm talking a lot about romance here because I think that's what people write to me the most about. But this is, lots of people feel lonely in other ways too, just in their friendships and other things. And I did a whole episode on making friends as an adult, so you can go back to that if you also want to. I'll link to that. But you can just keyword in friendship on my website or on YouTube, and you'll find it with my name. Myth number 4 is being alone is dangerous for your mental health. Now, I will say this, it depends. Forced isolation can really harm your mental health, but if you choose solitude, and this is what in the research we call positive solitude, it actually boosts your well-being. So the difference lies, and again, in your choice and in your mindset. So, and that goes back to the myth I talked about earlier, right? That it's subjective. It's how you view it. So, for example, quarantine during the pandemic often led to a lot of distress because it was so imposed. But choosing to take a solo day at the beach, very restorative, right? Choosing to stay single and not settle in a relationship, also restorative. And healthy if it's done with the right mindset. So again, it's really about where your brain is at. And we're going to talk about how to fix that today, okay? And let me just do one more myth. If you're alone, you're wasting time you could spend with others. I hear that one a lot. These are just the ones I hear the most. Alone time is productive in its own right. And again, the research shows that reflection, creativity, and rest all flourish in solitude, right? So if you journal for 20 minutes alone, you'll likely think about it, surface some insights, some aha moments that don't come up in the noise of your daily life. So there's really something to be said. Now, I also want to talk about gender differences in the experience of loneliness, but before I dive into the gender-specific research, I want to acknowledge that I believe gender exists on a spectrum, and not everyone identifies with the binary of male or female. Much of the current research, however, most of it, the vast majority, is still categorized using those traditional distinctions. So that's what I'll be referencing here. I don't mean to exclude people. That is not, I'm about inclusivity. The problem is it becomes, I have to draw my lines, right? So I do a lot of the research I quote is from the United States, not from all the countries that are listening to me. I try to include other countries often, and actually a lot of the research today includes I try to make sure that like Australia matches and Canada and other places. But if you're listening from Japan, and I have listeners there, thank you, you might have a different experience of loneliness and how it shows up, right? So I still think things can apply to you, but it's not going to be right as global maybe. And the same thing comes with so many things, heterosexual, different kinds of relationships, and you could be in a throuple or, there's a million ways that things can show up, including the spectrum right here. and of gender. So it's hard for me to, I just can't include everybody. I have not figured that out, how to do that in a way that's time effective for me. So, so I say all that to say, I see you. So I see you if you identify outside the binary, and I recognize that your experiences with solitude and connection are equally valid. I really do, even though they might not be represented in this particular data that I'm talking about. Okay. So, and I would ask you to take what you want and leave the rest for anybody who's ever listening, who, you know, it falls outside of the exact norm I usually talk about. Okay. And I even hate that word norm because it makes us think of normal, but that's not how we use it in research. I'm going to have another sip of water. Sorry. So I'm not coughing at you. So let's talk about, I want to talk about the male experience and this kind of crisis of disconnection, because there's growing evidence that men are disproportionately affected by what's being called a male loneliness epidemic. I'm sure you've been hearing about it. There was a survey in, it's either 2021 or 2022. I apologize. I'll have the right thing in on the show notes and in the blog, by the Survey Center on American Life. They excuse me, do a lot of different research in this area, and the number of men reporting no close friends jumped five-fold, 5 times since 1990, and with only 27% of men now saying that they have at least 6 close friends, which is down from 55% in 1995. That's a really sharp decline in male social support. Now, why? There are a few theories that are commonly mentioned. One, again, is emotional socialization. Many boys are taught to suppress vulnerability, to be tough rather than tender, right? And that can really make emotional intimacy in adult relationships, especially friendships, harder to maintain, especially as women are changing in how they are interacting with men, right? And males. Friendship style, men are more likely to form activity-based friendships, you know, bonding through doing, whereas women tend to build emotionally expressive friendships, bonding through sharing, not doing. So, and it seems to be, again, with the pandemic and doing less since the pandemic, doing less outside of the home, being involved in less things, the way our culture has shifted to more online, so there's less in-person things. And I think that difference explains why men often lose friendships when routines shift, like after college, after a divorce. So, you know, you're not playing baseball anymore in college, and then you don't shift to playing baseball, maybe or shifting to a male softball league or something, right? On the other side, and you're really losing out there. Cultural expectations, right? Traditional masculinity really discourages help seeking and emotional disclosure, which those two things, seeking help and emotional disclosure, are protective factors against loneliness. And if you're not taught those, right? And research also suggests that heterosexual men are more likely to rely on romantic partners as their primary source of emotional support, which means that breakups, divorces, death, obviously, can hit men, you know, if they become widowers. That's going to hit men especially hard in terms of social isolation. So, yeah, there's a lot there. So in my experience, I mean, I don't know. I think men are really starving for emotional connection, but they've been taught to avoid the very behaviors that create it. And so we end up on the other side of this, right? With, I think, a lot of times men blaming females and feminism and women. And that's why we get all this stuff like, let's get more traditional, you know. I think a lot of that comes from that, which is really sad and harmful. Now, the female experience, I think, is very different, because for the females that I work with and have worked with, and this is from the research too, more connection means more pressure. So while women generally report stronger emotional support networks than men, they're definitely not immune to loneliness. I do want to say that. So again, studies show that women are more likely to report feeling lonely than men, especially when juggling, you know, caregiving, career demands, relationship stress. uh, a lot of the moms I work with and have worked with report feeling lonely. And here they are. There's people around them all the time. They're being grabbed at, everything else. But because they're not taking care of themselves very well, they're not, they're not who they remember themselves to be. Their bodies have changed. I mean, everything. I went through this. You feel very alone. And you're not always able to find time to actually, you're so there for the family, you're not finding time to connect with your girlfriends or your, best gays, or your, you're not going to the gym, you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going for walks, that kind of thing. So I would say that the problem for females comes from emotional labor, women carrying the burden of maintaining, the social ties, remembering birthdays, reaching out, organizing events. It's exhausting over time, right? Definitely, women are more conditioned to be everything for everyone, which can lead to burnout and, emotional depletion. Again, because that relates to them, their own needs for connection not being met, right? Life transitions. Women who have children, I think, experience deep loneliness in the early postpartum period, or on the other side is empty nesters. And women who choose not to marry or have children often face all this societal pressure or stigma that can amplify feelings of isolation or loneliness, right? And what you might find interesting, although not surprising to me at all, is that single women without children tend to report higher life satisfaction and lower stress levels than married women with children. Not shocking, right? The stereotype of the lonely old maid, I want to say, has sort of deep roots in a patriarchal society. Historically, unmarried women were often stigmatized and portrayed as undesirable, or they were witches, or they were pitiable. And that narrative really served to pressure women into marriage, which reinforced kind of male dominance and control. So that's a big problem, right? But I would say there's a contrast now to like that. That's the lonely spinster is a really outdated stereotype. Many women today are choosing solitude, not as a consolation prize, but as a path, a healthy path, right? To peace, to autonomy. It feels really good. In my lifetime, women were not allowed to have credit cards, weren't allowed to have a mortgage, weren't allowed to have their own bank accounts. In my lifetime. Yeah, I'm old, but I'm not that old. It's crazy, right? So it's really relatively new. And women having more economic power and being able to make these decisions and having different choices now. So men we knew we were the oppressed, right? Women knew that already. A lot of men didn't realize that they were oppressing. They had no idea. So they're like fish who don't know they're wet. So they're just waking up into a world where they're like, where are the women? What's going on? Why, their standards are too high. They start to blame the women. So that's a whole other episode. I'm not going to go down that road right now. But you get the idea of where a lot of this loneliness is coming from. So, okay. So let's talk about how the fear of being alone shows up in everyday life, right? Because it's not just lurking in romantic relationships. It seeps into many areas, and it's usually disguised, I think, as something else. So let's talk about it. So in romantic relationships, I'd say we see it as people staying too long in unfulfilling or toxic relationships, right? Research shows that the fear of being single leads people to settle for far less than they deserve, over and over. I'd say another symptom is rushing into partnerships, jumping into them, jumping from relationship to relationship without really evaluating, just to avoid solo time, I call it the trapezing, like you sort of, it doesn't mean you're always cheating or anything, but it means you're very short in between going from one relationship to the other. Or moving in really quickly, things like that. In friendships, I think oversharing too soon to, fast track the connection, clingy behaviors, just texting constantly, needing constant affirmation, being all over each other's, Instagram and stuff, that kind of thing. Like this is this constant. I think that's how it shows up. Not really doing a good friendship audit, having, again, friendships that are toxic and staying in them too long, having one-sided friendships. I've done episodes on one-sided friendships. I've done episode on or one-sided relationships, and I've done them on finding friends in your adulthood, all that. And it'd be, taking a friendship audit is a really good idea. In career choices, I see, again, people choosing like some kind of socially busy work environment over maybe a path that was more solitary but more fulfilling. I see that when I talk to people. It's really interesting. Avoiding kind of a solo entrepreneurial kind of adventure because you're afraid that you're going to end up alone. Again, staying where there's toxic bosses, toxic coworkers, way too long. And that's this fear, believe it or not, of being alone. Like, oh my God, what if I never get another job? What if I whatever? Now, again, I'm not saying you should quit jobs that day, but people stay. I've had people staying for years in certain jobs because they're afraid of, believe it or not, being alone, being in a different kind of job where they wouldn't have as much social interaction. I know it's very interesting. I think in personal life overall, it shows up, in overcommitting socially, filling every free moment with events to avoid the discomfort of downtime. I see that a lot. Compulsive phone or social media use. I see that a lot. Studies show people will do almost anything to avoid being alone with their thoughts. And there's a really famous study that was done in 2014 at the University of Virginia where they found that people preferred administering mild electric shocks to themselves rather than sitting quietly with their thoughts for just 6 to 15 minutes. I know. I'll link to that. That's real research. And it's been replicated, just for the record. And I think a big part of the problem with this is that we often mistake busyness for connection. We mistake being busy with being connected. But that relentless activity is truly, truly a poor substitute for real emotional security. Okay? So what are some signs you might be afraid of being alone? Okay? Because spotting the fear, I think, is half the battle. So it might be showing up in your life in a bunch of ways. You might panic at the thought of a weekend without plans, like these people who ask me all the time, when I guess, especially if Gary's not around or my kids aren't around, now that my kids aren't around too. What are you doing? Like, what's going on? What do you have planned? Definitely a sign is if you stay in unhappy relationships. I don't care who that's with. If you constantly fill the silence, if you're that person who is anxious when things get quiet in meetings at work, with your partner, with your friends, on the whatever, if you're constantly feeling it. If you feel less than when you're single, feel like something's wrong with you. If you're someone who overshares early in relationships, you might have this fear. If you avoid activities or events because you don't want to do them or be there alone because it's about being alone, any of that. And so the more of these you recognize, the more important it is to start building your comfort with solitude. You got to build comfort with solitude. So let's get to the 5 research-backed action steps to reduce your fear of being alone. Did I say all that? Did I say that right? Okay. And let me just say, you're really going to get 6 research-backed action steps because my free download for this episode is a worksheet. So you can quickly, I think I called it like create your own script for moments of loneliness. I literally take you through like how you do it because you need something that you immediately say in your head, like a script, or so I give you examples of scripts, but I also give you a step-by-step in this download for how to get something that matches who you are, that you're going to believe. So that in those moments, there's something right there that you can say to yourself. So you can download that below the video if you're watching on YouTube. Like and subscribe if you are. Or you can go to the website and, get it. Or if you're part of my Patreon, it'll be part of what you get easily. No matter what tier you're on, you'll get this. So, so that I would say is like an extra. It's the mantra is important because it's something so that you have a safe place you can immediately go when you start in any kind of negative spiral about being alone. Okay. And again, there's a ton of other worksheets. There's journaling prompts. I even have a 7-day comfort challenge as part of the bonus kind of masterclass bundle for this week. But we'll get to that. And again, you don't have to join. It's fine if you just want to get the bundle. So, and I want to say this, if loneliness is a big issue for you, I really do want you to work on it, and however you do that. So you can just practice these action steps. You can get the free download. Remember, if you get the free download, you'll be put on my Love Bites list, my email list, which is twice a month. You'll get my love letter. It's not a newsletter, it's a love letter because it's just something, it's a little story, a little something to help you think more positively or think differently about your life, or sometimes it has tips, tools. It's never like, here's where Abby is this week. It's not that. And obviously I don't sell that list or share it with anyone. And of course, and that's it. You're not going to get spammed. You're not going to get I'm not going to sell you anything. That's not what I do. It's not what that is. And if you don't like it, you can just unsubscribe. Okay. If you love it and want to get it every week, you can pay $19.99 for the year, and you can get it every single week. And you also get my free 5 to Thrive Relationships Edition. It's a course that you can take, and it's free. That sells for $19.99 on its own. But anyway, and yeah, it's just 5 minutes a week to improve your life. So you can also just buy that on the website, and I'm really proud of it. You get 1 email a week for the year. It's like a quick lesson you can do in 5 minutes to make all your relationships better. Including the one with yourself. So if you're interested, go check it out. All right. Number 1 is to practice positive solitude. So, because you want to start small and build. This is your first step. Intentionally spending small, manageable periods alone helps rewire your brain's response to solitude. So you were asking, I know earlier, oh, Abby, you keep saying it's subjective and I have to change how I think about being alone. How do I do that? This is how. I'm giving you the how. I always give you the how because who loves you? Abby loves you. I love you. Here's the how. You don't have to spend a penny. Studies show that voluntary solitude, again, boosts creativity, boosts problem solving, and your emotional regulation. Okay. So you got to do it. You want to do it. You got to get better at it. So I would do this. I would set a timer for 10 minutes a day. That's what I would do. And every day, 10 minutes. During that time, do something simple and pleasurable. Drink tea, not with your phone. There's no phones, no distractions, no screens. Drink a cup of tea with your feet up and go look at your backyard. I don't know. Journal for 10 minutes. You could meditate, although I wouldn't even say to meditate. How do you like that? I don't know that I would even say to meditate because I think it's really this 10 minutes should be just you. No distraction, no screen. Sit outside. Go for a 10-minute walk. Gradually increase the time as you build comfort, as you get more and more comfortable. I would even say this. If you need to, start here. If 10 minutes just feels like, I don't know, Abby, anytime you're standing in a line, just stand in the line. I know. So I don't care if you're at the DMV. I don't care if you're at the grocery store. I don't care if you're waiting to check out at your, local pharmacy. Wherever you are, stand in the line. Do not do another thing. I was going for my a yearly checkup I get, the doctor. And I was in the waiting room, and I practice it. I was like, I'm just going to sit in the waiting room for as long as it takes and without my phone. And I just sat, just looked around, little people watching. It's always interesting who's in the doctor's office, who's coming in and out. I just sat. That's all I did. So I try to do it all the time when I'm online at the grocery store. I don't get on my phone. I just stand. If you're waiting for the bus, if you're waiting for your Uber to pick you up, just stand. Just stand. See what happens. Don't look at anything. These are great ways to practice, and they're usually much less than 10 minutes, or depending on how long your doctor takes. But, these things are usually even less than 10 minutes and also a great place to start. Okay. Number 2, in the how do you do it, is you have to reframe negative self-talk about solitude, okay? Remember, it's subjective. So, and we know this from an abundance of research over decades. Again, I'll link to some of it, but not all of it. We know that using cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and reframing negative thoughts will absolutely change your emotional responses. If you shift from thoughts like, no one wants to be with me, to I'm learning to enjoy my own company, it's gonna change your life. So, some action you can take. You can create a list of empowering affirmations about solitude, okay? Again, that's part of the bundle. I have this long list of some of these, but you can create your own. Being alone is a chance to rest and reset. Solitude is self-care, not punishment. I'm whole with or without others. I am a whole person, whether people are around me or not. And you would say these or one of them aloud daily, or maybe write them in a visible place, however you want to do that. That would be the action step I would do for that. Okay, to start. Number 3 is to build self-compassion practices, because self-compassion counteracts that inner critic that often, that's flaring up in moments of solitude. And again, research shows, I told you these were research backed. I'm not just like Abby says, this is from the research. That's why Abby says it. Abby's been doing it with her clients for 40 years. That's why Abby says it. Research shows that self-compassion reduces anxiety and fosters emotional resilience, okay? So, and I did an entire episode on self-compassion, and I've done episodes on self-love versus self-compassion, not just self-compassion. I come on, people. So much. My book, Boundaries Made Easy, has an entire chapter on self-compassion. Kristen Neff, the queen of self-compassion, look her up. Come on. There's lots of ways you could do this. But the action you could take, I'm going to give you right now because I love you, is the next time you feel lonely. Again, this is from the research. This isn't, Abby didn't make this up, but it's something I use myself and I have clients use. The next time you feel lonely, you're just sitting there, you feel lonely, put your hand over your heart and say something kind to yourself. You got to put the hand over the heart. I'm telling you, I know, but it makes a difference. You'd put your hand over your heart and you would say, I'm doing it. This is hard, but it's okay to feel this way. I'm here for myself. That was a good one, actually. What did I say? I hate when I say something good and then I forget it. This is hard, but it's okay to feel this way. I'm here. I'm here for myself. And I would keep also a self-compassion journal to help you strengthen that practice over time. Okay? And again, the self-compassion journal, how to do that, all that, I have links to all that in those other episodes. But I think this is really important work. If you feel lonely, you got to work on your self-compassion. Okay? I have a loving kindness meditation that's on YouTube. You can I'll link to it in the show notes, and below the video, but you can just Abby Medcalf, loving kindness meditation on YouTube, and it'll pop up. That is a favorite of a lot of people. I listen to that that's in my regular rotation. It'll help tremendously. I'm telling you right now, you'll up your compassion game for yourself and others. All right, number 4 is that you have to strengthen your emotional self-regulation. I've done entire episodes on managing your emotions and on how to master self-regulation. So they're just too big, people. They're too big, but it's such a high thing in the research. I had to say it here. So I'm not going to get into them here, but I will say that these areas are key to stopping the loop of self-recrimination, telling yourself, well, you're a loser because you're single, all those worries that you're going to die alone in a box under a bridge. Is that just me? All right. Do you know what I mean? So the bottom line is that there's a knowledge base you've got to conquer here. You really do. And again, lucky you, I've made it all bite-sized and manageable in those 2 episodes. Yes, I did. Because who loves you? Abby loves you. So you need to go listen. I don't know what to say. The self-regulation episode is actually 2 episodes, but at least listen to the first one. The how to manage your emotions. Again, how to master emotional management, my step-by-step guide. I've done that because they deserve their own episodes, because but it's not going to take you, days and days and weeks, because I've managed, you know me, I put everything into little bite-sized pieces for you. So go get your learn on, practice the action steps I mentioned in those episodes. Okay. But for now, what action can you take now? See, I'm here for you. I'll say that the research shows clearly that practices like mindfulness and meditation build emotional regulation. They build resilience. So I would just tell you to download my free meditation starter kit or my free mindfulness starter kit to get you started. I would do that. If that's even too much for you, you could try a breath-focused meditation for 3 to 5 minutes a day, okay? You would inhale slowly for a count of 4, you would hold for 4, and then you would exhale for 4, also called box breathing or something else. And then I would just do that. And then track how you feel before and after each session. Just do that, okay? That would take, between the meditation and the tracking it, the breathing, and the tracking it, that would take you, let's say you did it for 3 minutes a day, you wrote about it for 5 minutes a day. If you don't have 5 minutes, I can't help you. I can only give you so much. I love you, but you've got to follow through on action. If you just listen to me and don't take any of the action, why do you think? For 7 years now, I'm ending my 7th season, and my seasons are a year. I have been coming at you with action items. Why action? Because we know that's what works. You have to take action. So I don't mean that you have to do everything I've listed here, but take one thing away from today and commit to doing it. That's where I want you to start, okay? One thing away. If you took one thing away from every episode and you listen to me every week and just that week practice that thing, oh my gosh, how your life would change. And I know, because people write to me all the time, thank you, you're beautiful, please keep them coming, because it motivates me highly, and tell me how their life has changed because of practicing the tools. Okay, I'm off my Jewish mother bossiness. Well, no, I'm not, but I'm off it for the moment. Number 5 is gradual exposure to solo experiences. So I will tell you that gradual exposure therapy, it teaches your brain that the feared situation, so being alone, is safe. It's okay. You're not going to die. It's going to be okay. So an example, an action you could take would be a progression. So let's talk about an example progression. And again, I have lots of these stuff like this in the bundle for today's episode, but an example progression would be something like week 1, take yourself for a coffee or a tea. Go out, sit, again, not on your phone. Go sit, drink a coffee or a tea. Just hang out. Week 2, go for a solo nature walk or city walk. Just go for a solo walk. Week 3, enjoy a solo lunch. Start with lunch or breakfast at a restaurant. Maybe dinner feels really intimidating. Go out for lunch or a snack or something at a restaurant. Just a solo event. Again, get off your mother effing phone, okay? Just sit. Okay? Just sit. You might actually meet people this way. Hate to break it to you. Week 4, spend an afternoon exploring a museum or a park or something on your own, right? And I would celebrate my progress and reflect on what I learned after each outing. You could do that written, you could do that in your head, but I would consciously, remind myself that I'm a badass. Wow, I can't believe I did that. I'm so proud of myself. And I would think, what was that? Just reflect on it. Did I learn anything? How did I feel? I have a lot in the bundle this week around, or in the, what my community is getting around how you're feeling physically and emotionally when you're doing these things. Because right? We take action from our feelings. So I'm going to wrap up by saying this. Being afraid of being alone isn't a personal failure. It's not. It's not a failing of yours. It's a natural outcome of how we're wired and what we've been taught. I hope you learned that from today. But with awareness and intentional practice, you can flip the script. Solitude can become, a sanctuary, a warm, safe place instead of a source of fear. And when you learn to be at home with yourself, every single relationship in your life will improve. I'm telling you right now, guaranteed, you're going to find it. And remember, you're not trying to get rid of your need for connection. That's not what we're doing here. You're learning to balance it with the strength of knowing that you can stand on your own 2 feet also. Okay? So, definitely, if you're listening, I would, download Create Your Script for Moments of Loneliness, the free download. I highly recommend you check that out. And if you want to hear about what the Patreon community is getting, or if you're in my Patreon community and want to know if you're in a different tier and want to know what you're getting in that tier, I'm going to tell it to you now. And for the folks who don't want to join Patreon and instead want to just buy the bundle for $8, you can listen for everything that's going to be included. For everyone else, have an amazing week. I love and adore you. So, tier 1, which is my inner circle, you're going to get journaling prompts, a myth-busting list. Remember those myths I talked about? I have much more, so you'll get more. And my mindful solo activity list, okay, that I created. All right. If you're in tier 2, which is the love accelerator, you're going to get the reflection checklist. Am I avoiding solitude? It's a way of seeing where you are in everything. A guided reflection. There's a future self letter, a letter that you write to your future self, which is, I know, really impactful because I've done it with my private clients. And are you avoiding alone time quiz? There's a quiz. And are you avoiding alone time quiz? So again, a lot for self-reflection, some introspection, some understanding where you are in things. If you're in tier 3, which is the VIP Love Lab, so tier 2 gets everything in tier 1, tier 3 gets everything in tier 2 and 1. You are getting you're also getting a comfort with solitude progress tracker so that you can track your progress with getting comfortable with solitude, a list of self-compassion mantras, and a 7-day solo comfort challenge. So I know there's a lot there, right? There's a lot. So I'm always over, my goal is always to give you more than you ever thought you'd get. So that's I'm trying to over deliver but in ways that I think are meaningful and helpful. I'm also always trying to deliver. If you'll notice, a lot of things are similar, but I come at them from a different angle. That is because there's different learners out there, different ways people learn and understand things. And I want to support you in that. And so that's why I do that in different ways. Okay. So that is really it for today. Thank you, as always, for writing in and letting me know topics you want to have covered. Please keep that coming. It really helps me know if I'm on track or not for what matters to you and what's going to have meaning. Otherwise, what am I doing here? If no one told you this week, you really deserve love. You deserve connection. You deserve to feel connected to yourself. I would put that at the top of the list. I love you. I appreciate our relationship. I feel the reciprocity. I feel like it's not just me talking at you. I feel like you're in it with me, and that means everything. It's really my big motivator. So have an amazing week, and stay close to yourself, and I will talk to you so soon.